Imagine closing your eyes and never again seeing the blue of the sky, never again hearing the sound of rain tapping on the window or smelling the wet earth after a storm. Imagine never again calling any place home. That is the fate of humanity. Earth, our cradle, no longer exists. It was consumed by a war no human could avoid, a war against forces far greater than we could ever comprehend. The cities turned to ashes, the oceans evaporated into seas of fire, and even the atmosphere itself was devoured in silence, as if the planet had been erased from existence, and what was left of us were only fragments, remnants of a civilization that once dared to reach for the stars, now reduced to wanderers of space. The last generations of humanity live inside massive colony ships, rusted structures drifting aimlessly through the void. These ships are floating cities, overcrowded with survivors who fight every day against hunger, disease, and the collapse of failing systems. There are no more nations, no more borders, only hopeless crowds trapped inside shells of metal. But surviving in space is never simple. Beyond scarcity, there is contempt. Other alien species look at us as outcasts. To them, we are nothing more than cosmic refugees, a fragile race that lost its homeworld out of arrogance. Many believe humanity should have perished with Earth. And so, we are hunted, humiliated, exploited. Human life in this bleak future is reduced to a single law: survive one more day. And it is in this landscape of ashes and silence that our story begins. A story where the flame of hope has almost been extinguished, but still insists on burning. Among the millions of survivors, scattered through rusted corridors and cramped cabins of the colony ships, there was a man who never wanted to be remembered as a hero. His name was Elias Kane. Unlike the legends that still circulated in cantinas and marketplaces, Elias carried no fiery speeches, nor did he seek leadership. He was not a commander nor a strategist. He was just a pilot, an ordinary man trying to survive amid the chaos. Elias made a living transporting supplies between human colonies. With his small, patched-up ship, he crossed dangerous systems, dodging alien patrols, smugglers, and space pirates. He knew every secret route, every hidden detour, every gap in the stars where he could hide. It wasn't courage. It was survival instinct, but there was something about him that drew attention, even if he didn't realize it. A constant silence, a weight in his gaze, as if he carried too many memories. Elias had fought in the war that destroyed Earth. Still young, he had been a combat pilot and saw the planet consumed by fire with his own eyes. He watched friends burn in senseless battles, watched cities vanish into dust, and swore to himself that he would never again be part of another war. Since then, he had lived in anonymity. No family, no ambitions, no hope. Those who knew him used to say Elias was made of iron on the outside, but of ashes within. Someone broken, still breathing only because death had not yet arrived, and perhaps it was true. But the universe sometimes chooses precisely the broken ones to carry the greatest destinies. And without knowing it, Elias Kane was about to stop being just another wandering survivor and become the key to all of humanity. It was supposed to be just another job. Elias had been tasked with transporting cargo between two human colonies. Food, spare parts, and medicine. Routine. Nothing that drew attention, but in space, even the ordinary can turn into a nightmare. Midway through the journey, as he crossed an asteroid belt, his ship was intercepted by a Zer'thar reconnaissance patrol. These aliens, known for their hatred of humanity, needed no reason to attack. Elias knew this, and already had escape plans. With risky maneuvers, he dove into the fields of rock, leaving behind trails of debris to confuse enemy sensors. The ship shook violently, shields failed, alarms blared, but against all odds, he survived. When silence returned, Elias exhaled deeply and began checking the damage. That's when he noticed something strange. Among the crates of supplies in the cargo bay, there was a biological capsule, sealed with symbols he had never seen before. It wasn't on the official manifest. No one had mentioned anything about it. Curiosity overcame caution. Elias approached, examining the inscriptions. When his hand touched the metallic surface, the capsule reacted. Blue lights flared in geometric patterns, and within seconds, it opened like a mechanical flower. Inside, there was only a glowing core. and with it a message. But the message was not transmitted in words, nor in holograms. It was direct, immediate. It connected to Elias. Images flooded his mind: forests, rivers, the blue sky of Earth. And something more, an impossible knowledge. The capsule had been created to protect a secret, and that secret was inside him. In the DNA of his lineage, encoded in his very being, lay the genetic key capable of recreating Earth's ecosystems. Forests could rise again, oceans could form, animals could breathe once more. Elias was not just another survivor. He was the last seed of Earth. But with the revelation came fear. If that capsule existed, it meant someone had known the truth. And if the Zer'thar discovered it, they would do everything to ensure humanity never had another home, Elias realized. His life would never be ordinary again. From that moment on, he stood at the center of a hunt that could decide the future of the entire human species. The capsule did not remain silent for long. When it connected to Elias, it also emitted a signal imperceptible to him, but loud enough to echo through space like a scream of warning. And that scream was heard. Across the galaxy, the Zer'thar detected the artifact's activation. This race made of brutal warriors had never forgotten the war against humanity. To them, Earth's destruction was the ultimate triumph, proof that humans were too weak to deserve a place among the stars. And the mere idea that Earth could be reborn was unacceptable. For the Zer'thar, the memory of a living human world meant danger, a danger that needed to be erased before it could even sprout. Thus orders were given: find Elias Kane, hunt him down, and destroy not only him, but any trace of the last seed. Meanwhile, Elias struggled to understand what he had discovered. As much as he tried to deny it to himself, he knew he couldn't simply abandon the capsule in space. It was connected to him, and at some deep level, he felt he was now a part of it. But that connection came with paranoia. At the nearest spaceport, rumors began to spread. A freighter had escaped a Zer'thar patrol. A lone man had transported something not listed on any official manifest. And little by little, his name began to be whispered in cantinas and corridors: Elias Kane. The hunt didn't take long. First came the interceptors, fast and lethal, shadowing his flight paths. Then, mercenaries for hire, drawn by the promise of unimaginable riches. And soon the Zer'thar fleet itself began to move. They didn't just want to destroy Elias. They wanted to make him an example. They wanted to show the galaxy that humanity would never again have a home. From an anonymous pilot, Elias became the most wanted human in the galaxy. A man with a secret in his blood, racing against time, while alien hunters emerged from every shadow of space. And without knowing it, this chase would lead him to unlikely allies, and to the destiny that would change everything. Space had never felt so silent. Elias adjusted the controls of his ship, sweat dripping down his forehead. The console flashed red, fuel low, shields failing, weapons offline. He knew he wasn't alone. On the radar, 3 points moved in formation: Zer'thar fighters. They were fast, deadly, and had no intention of capturing. The objective was simple: eliminate. The first plasma blast tore across the void, grazing the hull of Elias's ship, shaking it as if ripped in half. Alarm after alarm screamed in the cockpit. He yanked the maneuver lever and dove into the wreckage field of an abandoned fleet, rusting remains of a forgotten war. It was risky. Any collision would mean the end. But for Elias, taking the risk was better than dying without a fight. The Zer'thar fighters pursued him, cutting through the debris field with monstrous precision. Small explosions lit up the void, shards of metal spinning like blades ready to tear him apart. Elias dodged by a hair's breadth, breathing deeply, his heart pounding. "Come on, old girl," he muttered, tapping the ship's console as if urging strength from a weary animal. The vessel groaned, but it answered. With a daring maneuver, Elias twisted between 2 colossal wrecks, slipping through an opening barely wide enough for his ship. Behind him, one of the Zer'thar fighters tried to mimic the move, and failed. It smashed into the carcass of a ruined frigate, erupting in a silent ball of fire. 2 still remained. Elias knew he couldn't defeat them alone. He needed shelter. He needed allies, but where could he possibly find anyone willing to risk their life for a human hunted across the galaxy? He steered his ship toward a nearby system where rumors spoke of a mercenary outpost, a haven for deserters and outlaws. A dangerous place, but perhaps the only one where he might hide. Behind him, the fighters continued their relentless chase. The game of cat and mouse was far from over, but Elias did not yet know that. In that forsaken place at the edge of space, he would meet those who would change his life forever. Kayla, Toru, and Orion. When Elias left Varen Station, he was no longer alone. Aboard his ship now were Kayla, the deserter, Toru, the mercenary, and Orion, the ancient artificial intelligence awakened from its long slumber. 4 unlikely destinies, forced to coexist within the fragile hull of a small battered ship. Trust was almost non-existent. First tensions, Kayla, despite saving Elias, was still a Zer'thar. And every time Toru looked at her, he saw nothing but a killer, a living reminder of the race that had destroyed Earth. How are we supposed to trust her? He grumbled. Have you forgotten how many bodies the Zer'thar left in their wake? Kayla's reply was cold, sharp as steel. I know what my people did, and that is precisely why I'm here. Elias, caught between them, felt the weight of being the fragile link that held the group together. He had no authority, no claim to leadership, but the capsule had bound his fate to theirs, and if they didn't find a way to work together, none of them would survive. The first obstacles, the Zer'thar hunt, never ceased. Enemy fighters appeared on unexpected routes, as if all of space had become one vast trap. One battle after another forced them to act as a group, even against their will. Kayla manned the weapons with deadly precision, cutting down enemies before they could encircle them. Toru improvised repairs on the ship, using scavenged parts to keep the engines alive. Orion guided their paths, uncovering hidden passages and maps no human mind remembered. And Elias, at the center of it all, began to realize he was not just the bearer of a secret. He needed to learn how to become a commander, even if he didn't want to. The dilemma of hope during the silent nights in the void. While the crew rested, Elias listened to Orion. The artificial intelligence spoke of Earth's past, describing forests, rivers, and animals Elias had never seen with his own eyes. You carry the possibility of bringing all of this back, Orion said in his calm, unwavering voice. But you must be prepared. The path will not only be against enemies, it will be against yourself. And Elias then realized something terrifying. The burden of hope was heavier than any hunt. The reluctant group, they weren't friends. Not yet, and in many moments, the friction almost tore their fragile alliance apart. Toru wanted to sell the capsule for the highest price. Kayla hid secrets from her past. Orion seemed to know more than he was revealing. But with every battle, every desperate escape, every risk they shared, something began to change. The distrust didn't disappear, but a seed of loyalty began to take root. Elias knew the journey was only beginning. They didn't just have to survive. They had to find the destination the capsule pointed to. A lost planet. A new home, or the final destruction of humanity. Aboard Elias's small ship, days and nights blurred together in the silence of space. Each jump between star systems was another fight against hunters, pirates, or Zer'thar patrols. But on one of those jumps, when everything seemed too quiet, the truth began to reveal itself. The activation of the capsule. Orion studied the capsule tirelessly. Its glowing core pulsed in rhythm with Elias, as if it were part of him. Until one day during an inspection, Kayla accidentally touched the artifact. Suddenly, a beam of light projected into the air. It was a holographic star map, filled with systems, routes, and constellations unknown. But among all those stars, one single coordinate pulsed in red, like a beating heart. That is where we must go, Orion said gravely. The planet indicated is compatible with the process of rebirth, the Forbidden Planet. The name of the world, lost in ancient records, was Nera Prime, a planet that, according to myths, had been condemned by the galaxy's own species. No one dared approach it. Some said it was cursed. Others, that it was guarded by forces beyond comprehension. But for Elias, there was no doubt. If the capsule pointed there, then that was the destiny of the last seed of Earth. The crew's reactions, Toru shook his head in disbelief. This is madness. We'll cross half the galaxy to reach a planet everyone avoids. Do you know what that means? Zer'thar pirates, blockades. Not to mention the cost of even getting there. Kayla, however, seemed intrigued. My people speak of Nera Prime in whispers. It is said that, even before the war, the elders feared it. If the capsule points to it, Perhaps it's because no one else would dare to search for it. Orion reinforced the point. If you want rebirth, there is no other path. Nera Prime is the key. Elias listened in silence. Inside him, the connection to the capsule burned like a flame. It was as if something was pulling him to that destiny. Inevitably, the argument ended when Elias, for the first time since it all began, raised his voice with firm resolve. We're going to Nera Prime. Even if it's the end. Silence filled the cabin. Kayla looked at Elias with unexpected respect. Toru grumbled but didn't argue. And Orion simply replied, then the path is set. The crew was decided. But the news of their course would not remain hidden for long. The Zer'thar were already tracking their movements, and they would not allow Elias to reach his destination. The secret of the planet had been revealed, and with it, the countdown to the greatest battle of their lives had begun. The arrival at Nera Prime, after weeks of fleeing, desperate jumps and nights in absolute silence. Elias's ship dropped out of hyperspace before a breathtaking sight. Nera Prime, a planet covered in crystalline oceans and untouched continents, wrapped in a radiant atmosphere, as if it had been sleeping for millennia, waiting to be awakened. It was beautiful. It was pure. It was the promise of Earth reborn. But the beauty didn't last long. Out of nowhere, the sensors shrieked. On the edge of space, dozens of signals appeared, a colossal fleet of Zer'thar, encircling the planet like predators guarding prey. Kayla closed her eyes, recognizing the emblem on the ships. It's the Dark Armada. If they're here, it means the Elders have decreed the final extinction of humanity. The clash of fleets. There was no time to hesitate. Bolts of energy tore across the void. Elias's small ship was engulfed in explosions all around, each flash illuminating their faces with the certainty of death. Toru shouted from the co-pilot's seat, "We don't stand a chance against this."
It's suicide!
Orion, in his calm, steady voice, replied, "It's not a matter of chance. It's a matter of choice." Elias gripped the controls. "Then we choose to fight. The desperate resistance. The battle was brutal." Their ship, a speck compared to the colossal Zer'thar war vessels, darted between them like an insect among giants. Kayla fired the automated turrets with deadly precision, cutting down enemy fighters before they could close in. Toru ran frantically from one panel to another, struggling to keep the shields alive, connecting scorched cables with his bare hands. Explosions shook the void like silent thunder. Human ships from other colonies, drawn by the promise of Nera Prime, appeared to aid them, but they were few, poorly armed, fighting more for hope than for victory. Even so, they resisted. The path to the surface, amid the rain of plasma, Orion calculated the only possible route. If we want to activate the capsule, we must reach the surface. Elias must be on the planet, not here. Kayla veered the ship violently, opening space with precise blasts. Toru let out a nervous breath. "If we descend, we won't come back." Elias, eyes steady, answered, "We have nowhere to go back to." With impossible maneuvers, the ship broke through the blockade, diving into the atmosphere of Nera Prime. Behind them, Zer'thar fighters pursued, spitting fire across the newborn sky. The final siege, even on the surface, the battle did not end. Elias landed the ship on a vast plain, surrounded by shimmering rivers and green hills, a glimpse of the world that could be reborn. But before they could even take a breath, enemy ships descended, closing the trap. Kayla armed her rifle, her eyes hard as steel. "They won't stop. The only victory is to activate the capsule now," Orion confirmed, projecting calculations into the air. "The process requires a living catalyst. Elias's DNA. He must connect directly to the capsule here, on this planet." Elias felt the weight of the revelation. The time had come. The great battle was not only against the Zer'thar. It was against time, against fate, against death itself. And at the center of it all, Elias Kane would have to choose to live as a survivor, or to die as the last hope of humanity. The open plain of Nera Prime seemed to breathe with him. The air was clean, light, almost sweet. Elias felt the wind brush his face for the first time in years. Perhaps for the last time. Around him, the sounds of battle raged. Explosions lit up the sky, fighters streaked across the horizon like demons of fire, and the Zer'thar fleet continued to descend in relentless waves. Time was running out. The final revelation, Orion projected the capsule in the center of the plane. Its core pulsed like a heart ready to awaken. But there was a detail Elias had not known, or perhaps had refused to know until that instant. Rebirth requires a living catalyst, Orion explained. The genetic code must merge with the capsule. This means you will not survive the process. Toru froze in silence, his eyes wide. You're saying he has to sacrifice himself? Kayla clenched her fists. This is madness. There has to be another way, Orion, cold as ever, replied. There is not. Without him, there is no new Earth. Without new Earth, there is no humanity. Elias's decision. Elias stood before the capsule, staring at the glow reflected in his eyes. Visions flooded him, rivers, forests, mountains, memories that were not his, but of the Earth long lost. He remembered the silence of the colony ships, the empty eyes of children who had never known a blue sky. And then Elias knew the answer. With a firm voice, he spoke. I've spent my whole life running. I ran from the war, I ran from my past, I even ran from myself. But I cannot run from this. If I carry the last seed of Earth, then it is my duty to plant it. Kayla stepped closer, gripping his arm tightly. Elias, it doesn't have to be you. We'll find another way. He smiled faintly, for the first time in a long while. Kayla, the other way is this one. The farewell before connecting to the capsule. Elias looked at each of them. Toru, his eyes brimming, unable to say a word. Kayla, trying to hide her pain behind her hardened expression. And Orion, silent, as though even an artificial intelligence could feel sorrow. Thank you, Elias said. Not for following me, but for reminding me that there is still something worth fighting for. And without hesitation, he placed his hand on the glowing core. The sacrifice. The capsule opened like a cosmic flower, wrapping Elias's body in beams of light. His cries echoed, not of pain but of surrender. His DNA, his essence, his very life was absorbed by the core, merging with the codes hidden since the age of Earth itself. In seconds, Elias was no longer just human. His atoms spread like seeds, dissolving into the winds of Nera Prime, sinking into the soil, the air, the water. He became part of the planet, the body vanished, but life had begun to return. The silence. After the storm, Kayla fell to her knees, staring at the emptiness where Elias had stood. Toru clenched his fists, trying to contain his anger and grief. And Orion, for the first time, spoke in a voice almost human. He chose to be the sacrifice. He is the beginning and the end of Earth. Above them, the Zer'thar fleet watched in silence. But something had changed. A new, wild, uncontrollable power spread across the planet. Nera Prime was no longer an empty world. It was the new Earth. The silence after Elias's sacrifice was profound. For a moment it seemed nothing had happened. Kayla and Toru stood motionless as if the universe itself had paused to breathe. But then, the ground trembled. The awakening of the world. From where the capsule lay, radiant roots began to spread through the soil. Flowing like rivers of energy, they coursed across valleys and mountains, branching in all directions. And wherever they touched, life emerged. First, tiny green shoots pushed through the dry ground. In seconds, entire trees rose toward the sky, forming forests that had never existed there. Rivers were born, cutting across the plains. Clouds formed in the heavens, heavy with fresh rain. And when the first drop fell on Kayla's face, she closed her eyes and whispered, "It's like the planet's own tears." The reaction of the Zer'thar in orbit, the enemy fleet watched in silence. What they saw was not just a transformation, it was a miracle. And even the cruelest warriors hesitated, because they understood. This was not just a planet being reborn. It was the victory of hope over destruction. Some retreated. Others, gripped by fear, swore vengeance. But none of them could erase what had begun. The legacy of Elias for Kayla and Toru, the pain of sacrifice, was unbearable. But at the same time, there was pride. Elias had not died in vain. He had become part of Nera Prime. Part of every tree, every drop of water, every creature that would ever live there. Orion, in his calm voice, declared, "Elias Kane has not vanished. He is the world itself. And this world will live on to remember the sacrifice of a man who did not wish to be a hero, but chose to be hope, the new beginning in time. Nera Prime would become the new Earth, Humans from the colony ships would migrate there, building cities along newborn rivers, breathing clean air for the first time in generations. Children would run through green fields, never knowing the price that had been paid for their world to exist. Kayla, Toru, and Orion would become guardians of that legacy, not out of duty, but out of a silent promise. The promise to protect Elias's sacrifice, the eternal legend. And so, the story of Elias Kane was told and retold across generations, not as that of a soldier, not as that of an invincible hero, but as that of an ordinary man, broken, who carried within him the last seed of earth, and who gave it away so that humanity could flourish again. His name would echo among the stars, not as the end of humanity, but as its rebirth. End of the story, the last seed of earth.